Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about when you don't think you're really creative and what you can do about it. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle, where we are all about how to get unstuck, clear, and excited about your next chapter, especially if you're in your 50s and 60s and feeling like life is just too short to keep waiting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach, midlife mentor, and certified Zentangle teacher, and I am so glad to be here with you again. If this is your first time listening in, welcome. I'm so glad you found us. And if you've been with me for a while, you probably already know that I've told you bits and pieces, little bits and pieces of my creative history over the years, because we are 9 years in at the time of this recording of the podcast. I tell a lot of stories, but I know I've shared a little bit about my creative history. The calligraphy obsession at 12, that's how it all started. The beaded wire kippa that ended up in the Museum of Modern Art. Yes, MoMA. I'll put that link in the show notes. It's a crazy story. But today, I want to put those pieces together in a way that I haven't done so before on this show, because I think that there's a belief running underneath all of it that I don't think I ever named out loud. And I think a lot of you are walking around with this belief too, or a very similar version of it. So we're going to get there. But first, just quick, today's show is sponsored by the Midlife Doodle Think Club, where I teach a simple, mindful doodling practice for midlife women who want more presence, clarity, and confidence. It's not only fun, but it's also a fun way to learn how to notice more and more and more in your life. No art skills or creative talent required. So let's learn together. Let's learn how to slow down in midlife and create a space to think. Please join us. You are invited. Head over to www.doodlethink.com. All right, so here's where I want to start. Small, really small. About 20 or 25 years ago, I don't really remember exactly when it was, but I made a pretty little valance for a bathroom window in my house. Nobody asked me to. I just wanted to. I think I saw it in a magazine or something. And I don't sew, so I was working with pretty fabric, wood, scissors, and glue. And I loved it. It's so pretty. And it lasted as long as we had that house. Around the same time, I took a simple, plain, boring 4-seater Ikea table, like very plain square table, and I turned it into a chessboard and a checkerboard, staining it all by myself because I had an idea that it would turn into not just like a central fun place for the kids to play games, but also kind of like a family heirloom. I imagine my kids fighting for it someday after I'm gone because it meant so much to them. But you get the point. I had this idea to create something. And this idea was the first time I'd ever stained wood, but I couldn't get it out of my mind. So I did it. And more recently, this one's a little different, a little more in line with a passion of mine. I've been doodling whales. Just whale tails, actually. I love it so much that years ago, I bought the domain www.whalework.com just as a placeholder, just in case, long before I knew what I'd ever do with it. Like I had no clue, but I just thought, I'm going to do something with that. And I still don't fully know what I'm going to do with it, but I own it. And some of you know that I've been whale watching since 1985, so that this isn't random. It's just another place where creativity showed up uninvited, and I opened the door. I let it in. So creativity moments like these have been scattered across my whole life. Some of them are teeny weeny. Some of them are a little bit more noticeable. But it's been pretty consistent for me over time. Here's what I mean. Calligraphy at 12. I was obsessed. Playing saxophone in marching band and jazz band in university, right? Saxophone is creative, and I did creative things with it. Making custom Fimo clay earrings and brooches in my 20s. Photography. I've always done photography since I was probably some of my earliest memories When I was 6, I think, is when I got my first little camera. Painting ceramics with friends while I was raising 3 kids who were super close in age. So back in the day when the kids were small, I used to love to paint ceramics. It was something new, and it was the time when these new paint your own ceramic shops were popping up. And I remember going with other moms who also had a baby in a stroller, and we would go and have a little break while the kids were hopefully napping and paint ceramics. It was so crazy in those early years with the kids being so young and busy, but we managed to do that. Another thing, photo encaustic wax projects, which is basically painting with wax. And over a decade of making beaded wire kippas, one of which ended up displayed, as I mentioned, at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. That is MoMA, which is, like I said, a whole story. I've told it before here on the show years ago, so I won't go into it again, but it's real. It happened. And as I mentioned, the link will be in the show notes if you want to hear more. And it's actually not even the point of today's episode, which may surprise you. And then there's my attraction to learning about Zentangle and mindful doodling and creating the Midlife Doodle Think Club so that we could share this beautiful thing that happens with doodling. It's just gold. And I just really want to share it with more women. So you see what I mean? That's a lot of evidence, and that's not even a comprehensive list. But I really wanted to think about it for this episode. So here's the thing. Something else has been consistent through all of this and more. And it's what's been going on in my mind. Because there's a pretty powerful belief that's related to all of this. And I want to shine a spotlight on it right now, because I know I'm not alone with this too. For decades, I thought of myself as creative, but not really creative. Do you know what I mean? Not real artist creative. And I have lots of memories of catching myself saying that I'm not a real artist. I'm creative, but I'm not a real artist. I'm not really creative. I could do all kinds of lettering, not just calligraphy, but painting big signs, on the side of a band bus and making ads with lettering. Oh, I could do all kinds of lettering. And I thought through lots of things in creative ways, even my professional jobs. But here's the big but, and that's always a joke when you get to say, here's the big but. I could not draw, and I could not paint. I couldn't do any kind of real art. You know what I mean? Like real representational kinds of art. And somewhere along the line, I decided that meant I was missing something. That there was a real, I'm doing air quotes, a real kind of creative that I didn't have access to. So creativity became this thing I did on the side. I did it on the side of my life. A valance here, a table there, some beaded wire kippas, some calligraphy on an envelope for a girlfriend's birthday, instead of something I let myself own, something I let myself claim as something that was part of me. And I want you to notice that phrase, because I think a lot of you listening right now, maybe you have your own version of it. Maybe it's not creativity though. Like for you, it might be something else. Maybe it's, I'm not really athletic. I'm not really a runner. I'm not really a leader. I'm not really the kind of woman who does things like that. Some quiet little disqualifier that you've adopted. And by now at your age, we've all been around a while, a few decades have gone by. But at our age, at your age, we've been carrying this stuff around for so long that you don't even hear yourself say it anymore or think it. You don't notice the effect it has in your life. It's just there. So now that I'm as old as I am, I'm on to it. I'm a little more wise to it, especially now having been a coach for over 10 years. So looking back, here is something that's really clear. What that belief, I'm not really creative, cost me wasn't an empty life void of all creativity. It wasn't a life that didn't have creativity in it. Clearly, there was plenty of creativity. I just talked you through all the stuff, and it's not even all the stuff. But it's like I couldn't help myself over the years. It was part of me. You should see what happens when I doodle up or use a fun stamp, like the kind that, a stamp that you put into ink and then you press on paper. Wait till you see what I do all of that with envelopes that I'm actually going to put in the mail. Like I've been doing that for decades. But what it cost me was permission. I let myself do the small stuff. I didn't hesitate at all making those fun envelopes, but I didn't let myself take it seriously or to build with it or call it what it was, And I remember the moment that cracked it all open. It was big and it was hard. And it was also super revealing. So way back in the summer of 2011, that's when it went down. We had to cancel a highly anticipated whitewater rafting trip through the Grand Canyon. I learned so much from that trip, canceling it and eventually going on it. I learned so much. It has come up as an example over the years here in the show. But anyway, we had to cancel it. And it was because a family member got really sick. Now, I remember feeling like a 2-year-old, honestly. I mean that literally. I wanted to stomp my feet and scream. I was devastated and embarrassed that I was so affected by my disappointment. I remember thinking, no, grown-ups, we have to learn how to handle our disappointment. Of course, I didn't regret the decision to cancel. Not at all. And it wasn't really completely about the rafting either. It was about needing something, anything good to hold on to in the middle of something incredibly sad and stressful and difficult. So I did something I'd never really done before, even with all that going on. I called a friend of mine. I reached out to this friend because I heard through the grapevine that she had just opened an art studio with a partner, like a business. I told her, I remember exactly where I was when I made the call. I said, I need some kind of an art project to focus on that summer. I have never said anything like that before to anybody that, had a studio. I wanted to create something out of old photos from a Cape Cod vacation that we'd taken the year before. So that's all I had the idea. That was it. It was just, I got to do something that's exciting. Why don't I use the photos from last year's vacation that was amazing and do something with them and get joy out of, revisiting the photos and creating something. So she suggested a series of 3 pieces, all mixed media. I'd never even said the word mixed media before when I called her. 2 photo encaustic, 1 photo collage with resin. And like I said, I had no clue. I hadn't used those words before. I didn't really know what she was talking about. I had to look it up. She tried to explain it to me. I didn't really understand. And I just didn't, I really didn't have a clue. But I'm like, you know what? This sounds great. I love the idea. Wow, 3 pieces, mixed media? That sounds fun. And because it was her studio, I basically got private classes with both teachers, planning and creating these pieces together. I had all of their wisdom and experience and privacy, and I was there for like whole days. Oh my God, it was amazing. All the steps, all the learning. So it wasn't just piecing things together at the end. It was everything, even from enlarging the photographs, which is something, I really didn't know how to do at a high quality. So it was so much fun, and I really was beyond thrilled. So that was the re-entry point for me. Notice it wasn't really fueled from inspiration. I just felt desperate to save the summer somehow. It just felt like, oh my God, this is going to be absolutely terrible for me and my family. And my attitude is bad if I'm feeling like a 2-year-old wanting to stomp my feet. That's not great. It came from necessity. That's what it felt like. So from there, that was the kickoff. That was the reentry. It was more art classes, more encaustic work, and eventually, in my late 50s, Zentangle. So I also want to share why I got certified in the Zentangle method in 2021, why I became a CZT, a certified Zentangle teacher. I felt compelled. I realized I wanted to feel legit. I really wanted to feel legit. Finally, this part of my life, I wanted to feel legit. I wanted a formal certification. Now, it's not like a university degree, but it's like a thing. And I wanted to use it in my business without second guessing myself. I wanted to build the confidence and the skill. That's it. That's the real reason. And I would have never anticipated this coming from me. I knew there was something I could be doing with it and that I would figure it out eventually. I would figure out the connections, why I was compelled and interested, why it made sense for me. I sensed it had something to do with calligraphy and pen and ink, but I didn't really appreciate all of it. Even though I didn't get it yet, I leaned into it. So I really want you to appreciate that. You don't always have to have all the answers. Remember, I'm always talking about what first, then how. And this is a great example of that. I knew I wanted to do it and get the foundation, but I didn't know how I was going to use it. If I would have waited any longer for the how, I would have squished my dream, and who knows, I might still be waiting. So this decision eventually became the Midlife Doodle Think Club. Who knew? Who knew? I didn't. So here's the shift. And this is the whole point of this episode. I still don't think of myself as the most technically skilled artist or the most technically skilled Zentangle artist specifically. I still catch myself telling people I'm not a real artist. I'm not going to pretend that that changed. But what has changed is that I catch myself saying it and thinking it, and I stopped needing that to be true in order for my work, my effort, my skill to count. This is huge. So what I turned out to be good at wasn't necessarily drawing, although I'm working on it more than I ever have before. I bought books, I watch YouTube tutorials, I do all that stuff. But it's modeling, it's teaching, it's showing other women like you how to use creativity for calm, for space to think, for presence, even when you might be standing exactly where I stood for decades, telling yourself that you're not really creative either. So that's the whole premise of the Midlife Doodle Think Club. You don't need art skills. You don't need talent. You do need a pen, a few minutes, and permission. The other thing that I didn't give myself for such a long time, decades. At our age, it's decades. So if you are a regular listener, you probably remember that I enjoy using an odd, fuzzy little blue wand at times just like this, when you need permission. And I am excited to give it to you. So get ready. Boop! I have it in my hand right now, and you now have permission. Permission granted, and I hope permission is received. Okay, so if any of this sounds familiar, if there's some version of, air quote, I'm not really blank, right? Whatever it is for you. For me, it was I'm not really an artist. I'm not really that creative. If you have something like that you've been carrying around so long that it feels like a fact in your life instead of a thought, I want you to consider that it might just be a thought that you've never actually tested. And one, my friend, it's completely subjective. There are many ways to think about your current state of affairs. You're choosing to think that one way. And you may not even think of it as a choice. But now that you're understanding things a little bit more because you listen to the show and you listen to this episode specifically, it's subjective. And there's something that I believe deeply, and it's really at the center of everything I teach. One of the biggest regrets that people have, it's not necessarily some big, huge, giant thing like an obvious failure. It's not allowing themselves to be happy. Let me repeat that. Let me shout it from the rooftop. It's not allowing yourself to be happy. And when I first understood that, when I first read it, I took a deep breath. I felt so sad. Allowing yourself to be happy. It's one thing not allowing yourself to learn how to paint watercolors, but to not allow, think about it. It's not letting yourself have the thing, not letting yourself do the thing, not letting yourself claim the thing, simply because you've already decided that it wasn't yours to have. Ooh. That's so heavy. And that's what this belief was doing for me for decades. And I don't want that for you. So I know you've probably heard this before, but midlife is not a rehearsal. This is it. You have to learn to think like time matters because it does. This is all part of regret proofing. You have to learn to think like time matters because it does. And sometimes the thing that's been sitting in you for decades doesn't need talent. It just needs permission. So if you're curious about giving yourself that permission, you want to boop on Zoom with me, or you want to learn it through mindful doodling, I would love to welcome you into the Midlife Doodle Think Club, and you can learn more at www.doodlethink.com, and I will link to it in the show notes, of course. You are cordially welcome to join us. So that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for being with me here today. My focus as your regret-proofing midlife coach is to help you get unstuck and get on with the good stuff. Being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. It is time to stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the happiness, excitement, joy, and fulfillment that you are craving. So for show notes and links, go to www.susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 472. And you'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running a business when you're a midlife gal. And it's also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.